Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Software Engineer K here. Hope everyone's had a good day. I've just been kind of casually following the market. I've been quite busy this weekend, but what I want to touch on today is I just wanted to have a bit more of an in-depth look into the kind of market that eComi VV is trying to capture. What percentage of that market seems reasonable to capture, and what that translates to in terms of a valuation, so that you guys can have a better idea of what the ceiling of VV economy looks like in a short term, and you can use that to inform whether or not now is a good time to buy. And I also want to kind of add on to that the kind of competitors that are entering that space, because there are some worries around that, and just apply that to some other kind of case studies that we've had. And we will wrap up with our daily price analysis as well, just because I want to compare not just with USD but also Bitcoin as well, because that's kind of what I've been doing, because now we're at a pretty interesting point. So without further ado, we do also have the competition going on. So the competition is I'm giving away 30 gems next week, Friday. So I'm going to be doing the AMA with Trevor as well. Drivable T-Rex. I'm going to make sure we can get that, but we'll see. So all you need to do is subscribe to the channel and just post a meme of 5 ultra red DeLoreans related to myself. Been seeing some absolutely funny stuff. Shout out to Shaq who did this one here. I think that's going to be a pretty tough one to beat, but he just seems to be like an absolute master at making memes. And yeah, just someone did the Salt Bay one. Yeah, I've been seeing some funny stuff on here. So yeah, definitely check it out. Like, even if you don't want to enter, just check it out. Like, there's some funny stuff in there. And staying on the point of Twitter, so in the ecomi group, someone had shared an Indy Kyler tweet. So he said, at 11 p.m. UK time, we have new information on major licensing deal, which is expected to be announced by ecomi. And then, yeah, just on this point, Indy Kyler News did have a previous announcement, which, there was no delivery on that. And then people kind of, started losing faith a bit. Again, I wouldn't pay too much attention to these kind of tweets by anyone who are announcing things on behalf of ecomi. Like, Reese has said this himself. Just ignore these guys. At the end of the day, it's ecomi that announces ecomi stuff, right? If anyone else is announcing it, just treat it as a rumor. And the announcement apparently was, one of the licenses that ecomi is in talks with is with Disney. One of the sources have confirmed, like, we don't know who the source is. And again, Disney was one that people were speculating, from way before this tweet was made. So it's just kind of like a guess in the dark, really. I don't doubt that ecomi has like some kind of contact with Disney, but this is just I'm not a fan of these kind of things. But the main kind of topic that I did want to touch on is just going back to this article on Forbes that I covered a little while back. So the collectibles market is a $200 billion market, moving on to the blockchain. And we know that ecomi slash VV, they kind of, saw this quite early on, and they based the entire kind of concept around blockchain, NFTs, and capturing a sizable chunk of this $200 billion collectibles market. So if we look at where ecomi is today, if we just go straight to this chart, convert this to USD, we can see that right now the market cap of ecomi is actually under 400 billion, but say 400 million. So I'll just round it up to 400 million. And if we just take a look, so 400 million divided by 200 billion. I just moved that. That's fine. We got it here. 400 million divided by 200 billion. And then if we just multiply it to 100 to get us percent, it's 0.2. So right now, ecomi currently owns 0.2% of this market. Now, you have to ask yourself, is 0.2% a large amount of ecomi to have captured of this collectibles market? Well, there are other competitors. A lot of the existing players that do own a sizable chunk of this market, they haven't migrated over to anything blockchain related yet, and it's not going to hurt them if they don't. not significantly anyway, because there are always going to be people who want the collectibles that are physical as well. But we are seeing this kind of transition to digital formats, because there are a lot of advantages to it. Not just the condition always being new in a way, because they can never really be worn down because they're on the blockchain. But at the same time, the ease of transfer, you don't have to pay for shipping costs, and there's this whole kind of move to carbon neutrality as well. So I personally think, if I was to compare it to other case studies, 0.2% of this market is not the maximum amount that Ecomi can capture. I believe, they can capture at least 1% of this market, and that would put them at a market valuation of $2 billion, and they were actually at $2 billion at their previous all-time high. So I believe that is a fair, sizable amount. Only once they've kind of got their proper exchanges out, after they've confirmed some more licenses, so they can bring in more fandoms into their niches. And I think from there we can continue to see some more growth. Now, if we were looking at other industries like, say, electric vehicles, for example, people knew Tesla was king from the start, but that didn't prevent other electric vehicle manufacturers from entering the space, and they were able to capture a decent chunk of that market. They pretty much every single electric vehicle manufacturer in the past year saw growth, just because it is a growing industry, and we have to remember that just because it's a $200 billion market right now, it will continue to grow year on year. And we have seen that, especially this past year, due to the pandemic. So, for example, Pokemon cards just blew up massively as collectibles. Target and these other retailers, they had to ban the sale of Pokemon cards just because the speculation was people, because of the pandemic, were stuck at home. So they saved all this money on eating out and traveling. And, because they're stuck at home, they just want something to do. And collecting is just a simple thing to do when you're at home. And that kind of led to an explosion of people just collecting things, specifically Pokemon cards. So, I think that as we move forward, as we adapt to a more hybrid style of working as well, more people will continue to, stay at home, work from home, I myself included in that. We will continue to see the collectibles market just increase in value. And, people are excited. There are people, not just collectors, but people are just into the kind of like tech side of it, blockchain, NFTs, and they will continue to buy into it. And through there, they will kind of, I guess, join the whole collector kind of community as well. I've seen loads of people who joined VV Ecomi just as Omi investors, and they ended up collecting themselves. I was always a collector, just not a hardcore collector, but I quite enjoy it, the whole kind of community. And on that point, people worried about Quid. Now, Quid, there's room enough for Quid to join as well, like without affecting Ecomi's growth. So that's perfectly fine. But I don't see Quid as being a major competitor to Ecomi, mainly because one point that I made in the past is why I was super bullish on Ecomi is Michael Duffy, the CTO of Ecomi. He contributed a lot to the code base of Omi himself. David Yu. He is a hardcore collector and distributor and licensor, acquirer of licenses himself. Al Khan, head of licensing. I don't have to say anything about him. All these guys, they have personally contributed and done something within the company themselves, and they have a track record of being involved in that community. If you look at what happened with Quid, this was acquired by an investor who has done, from what I can see, they've not done anything personally for themselves in the brand. They've just come along with a load of money and bought it. If we then look at the people in it, the CEO. Okay, so the CEO, he has a track record of growth in the business, but which is good. But the industries he's worked in, he was head of product at Nokia, so not quite related. David Yu, the guy's got 25 years of the collectibles industry. Like, he's got a track record. This guy has, a record of being successful in business, but not the same kind of industry. And then, when we look at the COO, so the CEO of Ecomi is Dan Crovers, and then if we have a look at the CEO of Quid, he is an attorney. So again, not really quite related to the collectibles industry. Like, the most successful companies are those run by people who are passionate about the industry and have a track record within that industry. This is why, I was super bullish on Tesla. I still am super bullish on Tesla because Elon Musk contributed to the development of Tesla cars, and, SpaceX as well. Like, contributed to the development of, their spaceships. So that's why I am super bullish. And then the other point that I wanted to address is kind of what's been happening with just the overall crypto markets. So if we have a look at Bitcoin, for example, now this is one thing that I wanted to touch on is back in 2017, we had this kind of trend of any token with Bitcoin in the name, people were just putting money into it. So if we just have a look here, we had, Bitcoin Gold, I believe, was a fork. Bitcoin, like Bitcoin 2, I remember that one. Bitcoin Proof of Stake, Bitcoin Atom, Bitcoin Token, Bitcoin Interest, Bitcoin Incognito. You guys can kind of see the trend. And that was the trend back in 2017. And these projects, they kind of all died and never really came back. And that makes sense because they were all, like the equivalent of meme coins of 2017. And that's kind of what we're seeing now is, with the market correction happening, these meme coins, once the capital exits them, it's not going to come back. So this is why I went more heavily into OMI, because I know that any correction, OMI will bounce back just because it's a legitimate project. It's not dependent on people buying and holding. It is dependent on people purchasing the NFTs as well as buying and holding the OMI token. And if you guys have a look at the VV marketplace, the NFTs haven't really corrected much at all. Overall, what I can see is, all of the kind of popular NFTs that they have, the collectibles, they're still selling for more or less the same price. Okay, maybe they've dropped a little bit, but I think that is partly just to do with fear. People just kind of want to offload, NFTs that they were hoarding for later on. They've decided they want to sell now, and that's perfectly fine. But I've been in some auctions trying to get Gary Frank Batman, and in the last minute, the price of it still goes up to like 70 gems, which is still above retail. I'm trying to get it for between 55, 60 if I can, and that just implies to me that that market is still healthy. Nothing going on with it, because it is a market driven 100% by retail investors. And this is the point I made before. Institutional investors are not sat there on VV trying to buy every single resale Batman. It's just not a thing. They are sat there, manipulating crypto markets, stock markets, but they're not there buying, NFTs. So it's a retail driven market, which is why it's completely decoupled to what's been happening with Bitcoin. And that's good because OMI is more dependent on the sales of NFTs versus, people buying and holding OMI from what I've seen. And that's fine. It's going to have more and more of a dependence on that NFT market as they do more drops, as they do, the bonus burn, all of that good stuff, more licenses announced. So, on that point, what I did also want to touch on is if we go straight to the chart of OMI to Bitcoin. So this is quite interesting. This is something that I want to touch on is on the 30-day chart. So we know that, we were sat on this 0.8 line. I'm just going to say 0.8 of Bitcoin per OMI just because I don't want to say all those zeros. So 0.8 from the 5th of May, 0.8 here, 0.8 here. And then we had this period where there was like this kind of fake news, well, not really fake news. There was this kind of rumor of a new listing, a new exchange. And then Bitcoin kind of started tanking more. And then for the first time this month, OMI has, relative to Bitcoin, has actually gone down. And that's interesting. So now we're at 0.6 and then 0.5. And I believe from the RSI as well that it was very, very oversold. There was just way too much OMI sold. And from there, we had a bounce back to 0.6 and 0.7. So from here, if next week, because remember, when this happened, this is the weakest point of the market, is on a Saturday around about the evening time. And that's pretty much where it dipped a lot. If next week, in the middle of next week, we come back to 0.8, then that just confirms, we were oversold and we're back to the kind of like one-to-one pairing of OMI to Bitcoin. Now, if Bitcoin survives this whole FUD with China banning it again for like the 10 trillionth time, then that justifies a new price, because every time Bitcoin survives something that is acting against it, that factor then disappears and that justifies a new price for Bitcoin. So I believe if Bitcoin survives, because this is quite a big issue. China owns about 60% of the mining capacity of Bitcoin. If they survive this, then that justifies a new future price that is at a new all-time high. And I believe from there, Bitcoin can definitely hit 100K. No doubt about that. But it has to first survive what's going on right now. So, there needs to be some kind of clarity, something that, puts people's mind at ease, that China banning it is going to be an issue. But looking back at the USD chart now, we are on the hourly chart here. So this is where we had that kind of oversold period of OMI and it's bouncing back. I think it is going to kind of come back and touch this trend line, but I feel like we will continue to go down, which is why I'm looking at liquidating a small amount of Tesla next week, just because I really, really want to get in a little bit more in OMI. I would like to have 10 million OMI. That's my goal long term. And I personally didn't see myself hitting that goal. With OMI went back when it was at 1 cent, like that was just way too much for me. But now at the levels that we're at now, it's looking more and more possible. So I really, really want to hit that now before the whole Bitcoin thing kind of blows over. But if we switch over to the 4 hourly chart, this should give us a better idea. Yeah, we had like another green candle. It's coming up to this trend line here. I hope we do continue a little bit more on this downtrend, just so everyone who truly believes in a project, who's not selling off, just so they can get a bit more at a lower price. And then moving forwards, I do see it continue to follow Bitcoin, and I believe Bitcoin is going to recover. And we can see that now. Just a quick point is most of the people selling Bitcoin. So this was something that Altcoin Daily also pointed out, is if you look at the age of the addresses that are selling Bitcoin, they're quite new. So that implies that it's newer investors that are panic selling. Because if you look at the older addresses for Bitcoin, those are either holding Bitcoin or they're buying it. And that just implies, the same thing that I was speculating, that it's mostly newer investors that aren't used to this market turbulence. They're just panic selling. Versus the people who have been around for a long time. They've seen these kind of markets. They're like, this is just an opportunity to get in and dollar cost average a bit cheaper, and they know that it is going to recover because China has done this before. They've banned Bitcoin like 10 trillion times before, and it always recovers. So I am not worried at all. I just see this as a pretty good opportunity to get in at more dollar cost averaging. Again, my personal advice is not to have everything in crypto, to diversify in different assets. Most of my portfolio is stocks. I would say, have some blue chip stocks, retail, real estate if you can, properties, get some gold as well. Gold's always a good shout. And there's nothing wrong with having cash as well. Like if you've got cash in a tax-free ISA, that's a good shout as well. I personally kind of live the cash strap life, but I do know people who have like a sinking fund. They've just got some cash in an ISA, which is there for if they really, really find a good opportunity, or if for emergencies as well. So yeah, my mistake that I made in 2017 is I had Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, ADA, everything. And I was like, yes, I'm diversified. And then the whole market tanked and my portfolio, every single coin in my portfolio, like lost like 50% of its value or more. So yeah, from that day, I learned, okay, if you only hold crypto, you are not diversified, regardless of how many tokens you're holding. So yeah, that's just something to take into consideration, but that's pretty much everything I want to go through with you guys today. Thanks so much for watching. Please do like and subscribe to support the content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.